Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to my channel. I am Michelle. This is Upgrade in Progress, and my purpose is to upgrade your human experience. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching this video. And if you haven't, hit the subscribe button. Hopefully by the time it's over, you'll want to hit the like button as well, but that remains to be seen. So thank you for tuning in. So I wanted to share a little bit today. I kind of get my inspiration based on things that I see, things that I hear, just observing. And one of the things I really kind of wanted to share about is, and if you don't know anything about me, um, I have just spent the last, 25, 30 years in the counseling profession. So I have, education. My master's degree is in education and counseling, and I'm a licensed therapist. And even though I don't necessarily want to do that in the public sector anymore, I want to do it more privately. I'm, kind of marrying and merging that history and that experience with this sort of new evolution of healing and evolving. And kind of moving away from the traditional modalities to, different forms of modality. And so this might be one. So thank you for, taking this journey and, sort of watching this evolve. So what kind of crossed my mind today, or what I got inspired to share about today, was managing our emotions. And the reason why that popped up for me today is, one, I just came out of the early childhood education field. And so my role as a behavioral health coordinator was to work with young children and staff and parents of, young preschool and early preschool age children. And, I had to work with the most challenging ones, because anybody can work with, the ones that are well behaved. But I got to work with and interact with the ones that were struggling with and had the biggest challenges with behavior. Now, I loved doing that. I love working with children, and I love working with people who are working with children and parents. Because the thing is children don't come automatically knowing how to behave and how to respond to their own needs, or their own triggers, or their own internal emotions. And so it becomes a responsibility. Truly, it becomes a responsibility of the guardians. But one of the things that I learned working in early childhood education was that parents, they don't know how to manage their own emotions, so they certainly don't know how to teach children. Because, and I'm not blaming, I just recognize that when parents don't know, it's because they weren't taught and their parents weren't taught. And it's just sort of this vicious cycle of getting really frustrated and angry with children because of their way they're misbehaving, and nobody really pointing them in the direction of how to behave. It was really just, I don't like what they're doing and I'm punishing them. And the problem with that philosophy is that when you punish children for misbehaving, you never teach them how to behave. And so they usually end up getting punished a lot. And what I kept hearing was things like, I would ask, well, what do you do when little Johnny gets upset and has this temper tantrum? And many parents would be like, well, I'd send them to their room. And so from a clinical therapeutic point of view, I hate to say this, but that's about the worst thing that you can do, because we're sending two signals. We're sending the signal and the message that that's not acceptable, go away, you're not lovable in this moment, which is how children perceive that. Because remember, they're having an issue and they need help. They don't need judgment. They don't need criticism. They need help in that moment. And the reason I know that is because that was my role. I would always walk up to and approach a child that was misbehaving in a very acceptable, loving manner, and that brought down the level of expression instantaneous. Whereas parents or teachers would approach it like they needed to do something, they needed to control, and that child would instantly be, re-triggered because they weren't approached in an accepting, helpful manner. So it became really kind of frustrating with working with staff and working with parents who were always just triggered by the behavior. And if you're triggered by somebody else's behavior but don't know how to manage it, then boom, you're on that merry-go-round because you don't know what to do. So that's why managing our own self is the key to helping anybody else, because when we're approaching children or even an adult who seems to be in a highly triggered or emotional state, we have to approach with calmness and confidence, because it is in that perception of that emotionally triggered person or child that brings a sense of calmness. In other words, remember when you were a child, or think about what children do when they get hurt or they fall down. Now, I have, twin 1-year-old grandbabies, and this is really easy to observe at this point as they're navigating this new landscape. But when one of them falls and gets hurt, what's the first thing a child does when, they're startled? They look for the adult to find out and learn how they're supposed to react. So, in other words, a child is running and playing and they fall down, or maybe they're playing with a ball and something gets broke, and the first thing they do is look over at mom or dad to see what that reaction is going to be. That's the programming right there, because your child's looking to you for guidance. So what do? You're okay. Get up. I mean, that's what I've always done, even when my son was small. It's like, if there was no blood or it didn't look like it was too bad, I would calm my own, insecurity or uncertainty, because I instinctively knew that that's what they want. That's what they're looking for, is the reaction on our face. So I think the first thing that we need to do when we're learning to manage our own emotions is that awareness, to just be aware of what's going on in our minds, and in our bodies, because that's going to really be key and communicate with us what we need and what's going on. And then the other part of that is just a little bit of understanding, a little bit of education on emotional expression, because emotional expression is part of who we are and part of the human experience. We're supposed to have emotions. Are we supposed to project our shit onto others and be angry? No. That is a cue into us and a clue into us that something's not right. Our emotions are not about, expressing and being hateful onto others. It really is supposed to be about letting us know when things are good and when things are not good, and, kind of learning how to manage that. Now, the not good is part of the human experience. It's what we're supposed to be doing, but it's how we respond and how we react to those negative experiences that will, make them stay around a little bit longer, or help us to learn them a little bit better. And Dr. Joe Dispenza does a great example of this, and he talks about when we have a negative experience or trauma happens to us early in life, that we integrate that. It becomes a part of who we are. So, 2 years later or something, when somebody says, well, what's the matter? And you say, well, this horrible thing happened to me, a while back. And it is the reliving of that then gives life to the emotions that were, experienced when that trauma happened, and how we assigned, blame, and how we assigned, what happened in that to expressing of those emotions. So maybe an example is, maybe when you were little, your parents used to beat you, and that's a traumatic experience in and of itself. But what that child learns if they are punished or beat by their parents is that there's something wrong with them. So whatever they got punished or beat for, they learn to suppress that. So if they got beat because they made noise in the house, then that person then grows up to learn to be very quiet and not express themselves. Or if they got beat because they were late, they're going to be really hypersensitive, maybe about, paying attention to time, or paying attention to what other people need. So our early experiences are one of the reasons how and why we understand or misunderstand our own emotional expressions now. So, and the other thing is triggers, knowing your triggers, know who triggered you, what situations, even feelings. I don't like to feel vulnerable, so I'm never going to put myself in a position to feel vulnerable. I don't like to be alone, so I'm going to avoid being alone or lonely at all costs, meaning I'll stay in toxic relationships because I don't want to be alone. So again, knowing your own triggers and what triggers those emotions that make you feel out of control is one of the ways that we need to learn to start managing in. So then I think some ways to help to start to manage them are, again, one, being aware of your emotions and when they crop up, understanding them a little bit better, recognizing the triggers, but then also kind of have something in place or a process that helps you honestly kind of reflect on that. So whether it is a moment when you're just driving home, or you take 10 minutes on your work break to sort of meditate and sink in, the only way to really change our emotions and our expression of those emotions is to understand how we're expressing them now and how we want to be in the future. And I think that will help us learn how to express ourselves a little bit better. So I hope this helped. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening, and thank you for upgrading, because learning how to manage your emotions was your human upgrade experience for the day. I love you. I'll see you soon.